Shalom. So we're going to talk about Leviticus chapter 15 and verse 2. It says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, because of his issue he is unclean." Now, we're just going to get a little bit deep on this, and I'm trying to make it as short as possible. So I'm not going to go through all the precepts. I'm just going to deal with one particular aspect of it. So now we're dealing with a man who is having sex with demons, or rather, a man who demons are having sex with, right? So we're gonna look at some of the ways how these things happen, right? So at first, we're gonna look at it from a ritualist standpoint, right? Like, you can go to a witch or wizard or whatever it is, and they can do these crafts on you to get you how they want, through love potions and love candles and all of these things. And like I always say, the Bible is the book of life, and it can also be the book of knowledge, good and evil. It depends on what intention you use it for, right? So now when you're dealing with this ritual, where some of you might know, if you have not personally experienced it, but you might know of people who are under this tie, when somebody makes an unnatural connection to another person. And what usually happens is these types of relationships, they usually end up in one person killing the other, right? Because it's no longer natural. It moves from love to obsession. Now one person wants to get away, and the other person wants to keep that person under his or her control, depending on who did the thing, right? So, for example, this is one way to put two people together, or one way to separate two people just because you want to get with that man or that woman. And this is why we could not understand when the Bible said, "Do not covet your neighbor's wife," because this is opening doors to all these different types of spirit. Now these spirits come and take over our minds, take over our consciousness, right? Now it's manipulating us to have us doing all these evil things, and we will go to the furthest extent to fulfill the deed of that spirit that is manipulating our minds. Jealousy is always there, and through jealousy a lot of other things are opened, right? So now let's look at the book of the Songs of Solomon, for example. If you read that entire chapter, you see what it's mainly about, love and so forth. So no person can go to a ritualist and they have those candles, right? So 8 chapters for 8 days straight, they burn candles, and every day they burn the candles, it gets closer and closer and closer. And when the candles meet and burning together, that's when that relationship is sealed, right? So that's one way that two people get together, and that's not so natural or healthy. And you always have problems in those relationships. You constantly fight, you're constantly in rage or anger, and so forth, right? So just as you can do this to put two people together, you can do the same thing, well, kind of like the opposite, to separate two people. So in the event where this man wants this woman, but this woman is married to another man, or it can be the opposite, it can be a woman that wants to be with another woman's husband, right? It's the same thing. What the ritualist does is he will have two candles, right? So they're burning the candles and they're reading the Bible for 8 days, right? So one chapter per day. So it's the same. You burn, you read the chapter, and the next day you do the same thing, and you burn, and it keeps going further and further apart until the end of the 8th day. That's exactly what's happening. So if this candle represents the person that you want to be with, then your candle would be over here. So this is the person that he's with, right? Or she's with. It's burning away. They're going away from each other, but he or she is getting closer to the person that wants to be with this person in the relationship. So this is how it works. The Bible has to always be present, right? And as you know, candles, because back in the days, the priests would use live coals. They would use coals in the temples that never go out. Today, we don't have that physical temple like back then, right? However, altar is very important, and that I will have to discuss differently, because we think that because the temple is no more, altars are no more. The true altar is always the spiritual, right? That's the altar made without hands. So, yes, the physical temple is out, but altar is still here. And also, the services or the duties that the priest would usually do back then, it can still be done, absent the physical temple. All right, so just to let us get an understanding of what we're actually dealing with, right? That the same Bible that is used for good can be used for evil depending on the hand of the person that it is in, meaning the intention, right? So that's one way, which is through rituals. Now, the next one is sexual acts of immorality, right? So when you read the book of Leviticus 18, Leviticus chapter 20, I mean, it's all throughout the laws, but mainly in this chapter, it tells us do not do what these other nations were doing back in Mesopotamia, back in Egypt, and all of those. Do not do these things. So we have the law to prevent our spirit from getting entangling with all these different negative or evil spirits, right? So, for example, a lot of the other nations, they get into that bestiality, sex with animals, sex with the same gender, fornication, the adultery, the covetousness, all of these things. The Most High warns us not to be involved, because guess what? There's some unseen force that we cannot see with our naked eyes. So when he says, don't do this physically, it is not just about the physical, but there's something also taking place in the spiritual that our eyes cannot see. And because our eyes cannot see, we think these things don't exist. And this is why we constantly have these problems in relationships, because we take on all these demons for transgressing these laws, and then we go to other people and bring those demons with us. Now there's a war happening, and you can't tell, why are you arguing, why are you fighting, why is this happening in the relationship? Because what? Other spirits are there too. So now you have your partner, but guess what? Something is between. There's no drive there, right? Bloodline. A lot of things that some of us are experiencing are really not our fault, right? Some of them had nothing to do with us, but guess what? Some karma you cannot change, so you cannot change the family that you were born into, right? You cannot change that. You cannot change if you were to born in a rich family or a poor family. You cannot change those things. So the only thing you can do, which I'll tell you of the things that you can do to fix these problems at the end, right? So you'll have to really do a lot of praying, and not only praying for yourself, but also of your fathers before you or your mothers before you, right? But no, for now, we're really dealing with the male. So I want to keep it in that part, but I'm just going to add something regarding the female when it comes to this bloodline thing, since we're dealing with these spirits. A lot of our black women, there's There's nothing they find more attractive than false hair. And not only that, but some of them are highly attracted to high color hair. They don't want the regular black dark hair. It has to be bright, right? Because when you're getting into that spirit of the mermaids, when you think of mermaids, or even when you see in movies, what do you normally see? It has to be some high color, long pretty hair, and always be brushing it, right? So when these people take on these spirits, whenever they go to the hairdresser, it has to be a high color. They're not comfortable with their own dark hair. And even if they're putting something, some weave or whatever it is, extension, they don't want it to be this color. It has to be something bright, purple, pink, gold, right? But that's for the woman. I'm just throwing it in because these are things that can be passed down from, great grandparents, grandparents, or even beyond in that generation, because a lot of our people back then, they were dabbling into these spirits, these entities, right? And family keep those secrets. The thing about people is, when it comes down to their home, if something like that happened, they want to keep it as quiet as possible. So the other generations after don't even know what happened to their great grandparents, right? But if it was somebody else's home, that's when the gossip goes around, right? Now, these things can be transmitted, right? A lot of people who have been abused, raped, molested, and so forth. And it doesn't matter whether you've been molested by the same gender or not, it can be the same, right? Because it's just, these entities are just looking for an open door. And usually when the spirit breaks, that's when the door is open. The mind becomes weak. The mind becomes weak, and that's where they come in. Now they start to do what? Manipulate the thoughts, right? Everything becomes perverse, right? So just as I did before, I did a video before about sexually transmitted demons. These spirits are transferred, they are transmitted through this process sexually. And this is why it's important that when children or young people are being molested or whatever age, it's important to help them process it properly, because when they're left to their own thinking and trying to make sense of it, trying to get into that state of denial to feel comfortable or whatever it is, these are the doors that are opening. And it destroys them more because they don't know how to process it. They grow paranoid, they're afraid of being in the dark. They think that something is going to happen. That fear is that dark shadow that hovers over the person. You might not be able to see it, but some people can see it, right? You can look at the aura of the person and tell that something is going on in their life. There's an aura around you, right? The next thing is soul ties, which we talk about that. So these are door openers for demons. And this is why it's important that when that has taken place, it's important to sever that ties. You understand? The demons are all around and they're looking for vessels to grab hold of. These are perverse. They feed from sexual perversion. They feed from fornication, adultery, raping, molestation, all these, everything that the Most High says we should not do, they feed from it. So this is why there's always only two way. There's no in between. It's either you're gonna do the work of the Most High, or Satan is gonna lie at your door and you're gonna do his will. But there's no other way out. There's no neutral. There's no in between. When it comes down to demons having sex with men, you have the physical and you have the non-physical signs of how things show up in your life, or how things start to look in your life, right? As it says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. That scripture is very deep, right? So what are some of the non-physical things that do happen, or we can look forward to? Dreams of intercourse, right? So you'll have dream about having sex with this particular person. Sometimes it's with a stranger, somebody who is totally out of your league, like a particular celebrity, or a some famous person or a rich person who is totally out of your league. You have no clue. Somebody of the past, or somebody who already passed, meaning dead, right? The thing about that is, when they're dealing with doubt, when they're dealing with doubt, in the waking state, you can doubt your reality. Something that you know to be true, but you can doubt it. In the dream state, it's not the same. For example, you're dreaming about a person who is dead. Your conscious knows the person is dead, but in the dream, you do not have the willpower to doubt that person being dead. Some of you might have experienced this. There's no doubt in your dream state like that, right? So if they're talking to you, you're still going to listen, but you might be saying in the dream, but you're supposed to be dead, but you're still going to, right? So you get these types of dreams about having sex, and you're going through a physical part as well, because guess what? You're going to get some bodily sensations, especially around this area, the thigh area, the genital area, right? You're going to feel these different types of sensation. You will find that you have erection. You will find that you'll even ejaculate. You have wet dreams sometimes, right? And it can happen while you're in a deep sleep, or when you are kind of going off in a trance. Like, it's like you're hearing somebody talking to you, but these voices are actually in your head. It's almost like auditory hallucinating, right? You hear the voice. It's like you're so sure that this particular person is talking to you and is telling you sensual things, and your body is being given over, so you're feeling these sensations. It feels so real. So there's something happening in the spiritual, and it has a reaction in the physical, like I said, through the different sensations, right? Another thing is that sometimes these entities attack your finances, right? So you might even have a business, but that business is just a 9 to 5 under the disguise of a business, meaning that just like you would have a regular job, but it's not doing too much for you. It's not doing much for you. You have a business, money might be coming in, but it's going out so much, right? So it's really like another 9 to 5 job hiding under the name of business, right? You're handling money. You have a good job, whatever it is, but money keeps going out. Even if you should invest in something, it's still the same, and you just can't seem to know where these spirits, these things come in to create problems in your life, right? These things will prevent you from getting into a relationship with people, or if you're already in a relationship, if you're already married, it will try to always come between you and that physical partner. Doing what? Now your drive is taken away. You don't have much desire for that person. So even if the person is not around and you feel the need for your partner, you're excited that, oh, she's going to come home later and you're going to do this, you're going to do that. By the time she reaches home and you see her, your spirit gets very crossed. You're angry. You cannot stand that person anymore. But a moment ago, you just wanted that person. These are jealous spirits that try to destroy your relationship. This is why sometimes your relationship doesn't even pass 3 months. By chance, if you make it to 6 months, much more a year. know sometimes that something is really happening is you will get dreams, right? Like it says, like the scripture says, dream is a resemblance of one thing to another. So sometimes you get dreams, but you can't really discern what it really is. But you will see that you are here, your partner is here, but there's a beast in between, maybe a snake, some spider, something dangerous is between. It is showing you in the spirit realm that there's an entity between you and your partner, and it needs to be cleared, it needs to be removed. And you're gonna have these dreams over and over because there is something there. You just cannot see it with your physical eyes, but you're getting revelations through dreams. So there are two forces working, right? Now, how do you deal with this in a case where you're being tied through rituals with a person? It's very simple. What you do is you buy a tank top, marina, and you wear it, you sweat in it, and then you take it, you squeeze it, and you drink your sweat, and you're free. It's very simple, right? Well, if you have, like as in number two, sexual acts of immorality, if you have been doing that, right? You have a tendency of doing that, then you just have to go back to what the law says and you start keeping the law, and that would reverse. Now, also, you need to change your intentions, right? And this also goes deeper because sometimes we just only think about like porn and so forth. But guess what? Some of those things you see on normal social media, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth, they have very sexual content, and sometimes we give our minds over. So you might not be watching a direct porn, or some of these things that you entertain are opening these doors. So now you only go on Facebook to look for these type of women, or Instagram, or Snapchat, or Twitter, or whatever it is. You go and look for these type of content. The books that you read, if you should take up the Bible and read, by the time you read the first verse, you want to sleep. But take up a magazine, women with, particular figures and dressing, and you can stay up all night to look at it. You have to see where your spirit is, what your intention is set to. Now you withdraw your attention from that, and part of doing that is to do what? You have to counteract it physically. This is why you have to start keeping the law. In this case, number three, if it's in your bloodline, if it's coming from generations before, when you're praying, you have to not only renounce your sins, but also that of your fathers before you, right? You have to pray to renounce whatever they were partaking in. So this is just a little rundown of a man having running issues out of the flesh, because it can come into that discharge thing, right? You wake up sometimes, like I said, ejaculation, right? It can be that because of constant wet dreams and so forth. So this is how you take care of this. And if somebody has tied you to them, tied you in a relationship, this is a way to free yourself. Shalom.